Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
You are not going to believe what GW did this time.
I think this is the content that people need.
And it's going to be relevant. I mean, extremely relevant to the wargaming hobby specifically.
I gotta say, it might be a little too extreme.
Extremely relevant. And it's always on time.
You know, it might be a little too extreme. I gotta say,
this might actually be a little too relevant. Just a word of caution.
A word of caution to the viewer. This might be a little too relevant.
Welcome to the extremely relevant, always on time podcast with Justin from Haunts Wargaming and Brooks from occasionally from Haunts Wargaming, right?
Yeah. I also have my own channel called Etherforge that I post very, very infrequently on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were still even doing that or not, because you have like 2 videos, right?
Yep, I have a third one recorded and in DaVinci.
Okay.
But, you know, it's been in there for a couple months. I just have to do the voiceover.
Okay. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, eventually it'll be out.
Yeah, you have Instagram too that you post on occasionally, right?
Yep, that's a bit more active than the YouTube.
Yeah, I've been trying to post on there more. Today we're gonna talk about 3D printing and the potential addiction to it, specifically in the miniature wargaming space.
Yep, 3D printer goes bird.
I know the 3D printers have been around at least since the 80s, I believe. But they weren't like really a major thing until like maybe like mid 2000s. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
You got into it well before I did. I probably wouldn't have got into it if you hadn't introduced me to it.
Yeah, so I got my first one for Christmas in 2019. So I got the Photon S for the year that came out. And yeah, I mean, they're very user-friendly, I think, and it was really easy to get into.
Yeah.
Even on that older machine, the results were pretty impressive.
I think I bought my first printer in 2021, I believe.
It was right around the time you started the YouTube channel.
Correct? Yeah. That's what I was thinking. It was about 3 years ago. It may be 4 now, or closer to 4. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
When would you say it really started to become a big thing in the miniature wargaming hobby space? Because you've been in the hobby longer than I have, whereas I started maybe like 5-6 years ago. I know it was a thing back then, but it was still pretty new, and it's gotten a lot bigger over the past 5 years.
I think it's just kept increasing like exponentially. Like, I mean, I'm sure that it was around before 2019, and I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that I got a printer, but around that year is when I really started to notice more and more things popping up, like 3D printing and people talking about proxying, full armies and all that with it.
Yeah.
So it was probably, 2017, 16, around there is when it really started to kick off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly secluded as far as like I don't really have like a big picture perspective on that in particular. Like I've never been to a con. That's kind of what I get from what I have seen, is that it's kind of just recently started becoming a major thing right about the time that I started getting into it, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I know. I went to Adepticon, I believe it was 2017, and I went in the Age of Sigmar tournament, and there was nothing in the packet or anything about 3D printed proxies, so it wasn't even a consideration.
Yeah.
In that tournament. So,
did you see Fohammer's video on Adepticon this year?
I have not.
It was about how 3D printing is like kind of coming there in like a big way now. Like it actually has like a pretty significant presence.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I really want to go back to Adepticon. I haven't been back since.
I'd like to go as well. I might go next year. I mean, I run a YouTube channel, so I feel like I should go.
Yeah, I was going to try to make it this year, but I have other plans on that weekend, so.
Yeah, I'm just really bad at planning ahead for stuff like that.
Well, we'll have to sit down and hash it out. I think it'd be a good thing to go. It's good to go with other people, too.
Yeah. 3D printing has gotten more convenient. It's gotten more cost effective. I've definitely witnessed that. Compared to the traditional way of like buying models and putting together kits. You don't have to put pieces together as much. You don't have to do as much cleanup, which I love. When I go back to like plastic kits and I have to like clear the mold lines off of like 20 different pieces just to put together one model, it's just agonizing.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Some of the newer kits coming out are a little bit better for that.
Yeah.
You get, single pose models and everything. And I would say it is more cost effective and all that, but only after you have it set up.
Yeah.
Once you have your setup, like your printer's up and running, you're getting consistently good prints, then it becomes like you won't be able to beat it.
I just recently got a new FDM printer, and it was like already like almost a year old. Like it's not like a new one, and it was
Mhm.
like 5 times faster than the one I had previously. So it's just like getting better exponentially. Though I do feel like we've kind of hit a ceiling.
At least with the resin printers, it kind of seems like it. Right before this, I was looking at um, a lot of the newer machines coming out, and it's like the speeds are 20 millimeters a second faster, or the precision is zero point 0.3 whatever's more precise. So it's little increments, but then you also run into the issue where they have to release these companies seem like they have to release a new machine every single year.
Yeah, I was. This is actually from another Faux Hammer video that I just watched. He was talking about how, in a sense, we have kind of hit a ceiling as far as like quality, because like I personally feel that maybe like 2K, 4K, that's about as good as it's going to get, like to the naked eye, and anything
Yeah,
else that they add to these printers, it's just convenience things. It's like it just adds to the convenience factor.
yeah, exactly.
I can definitely see that with the new FDM printer that I got. I mean, it is a lot faster, but it's also got a lot smoother operation. It's got a lot of little things that just make it nicer to use. So in that sense, yeah, I feel like we've kind of hit a ceiling. Not to complain about that.
No, and it's also very limited by screen technology because, if that doesn't improve, then the 3D printers can't really improve.
Yeah,
So I'm looking at the new Mono M7 right now, and they claim it's a 14K screen.
yeah,
But the new thing I've been seeing a lot of too in these printers is they have a temperature control system, so heating thing for the resin vat and auto refill.
that'd be
Yeah,
nice if you're not in a temperature controlled space already, which I
yeah.
feel like a lot of people probably are.
I've
But
heard a lot of people having them in their garages too.
yeah, it makes sense that I mean, that's where I had mine for a while. As the resins get less smelly and the fumes are easier to manage, I don't think that's gonna be as much of a necessity.
Yeah, I think that's also where they need to improve a lot more is the resins.
You haven't tried the water washable resin that I've told you about yet,
I
have
have
you?
not. No, I've been stuck on the same resin for like 3 years, so I probably shouldn't talk.
Yeah, you gotta pick some of that up, man, because
Hmm.
I'm pretty happy with it, honestly. Also, 3D printing offers a lot of creative freedom. You can make your own stuff if you're really good at sculpting in 3D programs. You can print out even just like using simple CAD programs to like make simple things and print that stuff out, which is something I'd like to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that a couple times. Like I made some desk organizers for my wife,
Yeah.
and it's, a couple minutes in a CAD program, you
Hmm.
can whip something up. And then as far as like miniatures go, even Windows 3D Builder, it's a free program on Windows, and you can like cut and customize miniatures pretty easily. I've done that a couple times. Remove an arm here, put a new one on, cut one at a wrist, so you can add a different weapon, stuff like that.
As far as customizing like miniatures, it's pretty much like sky's the limit.
Hmm. I've always had problems with FDM printers. I have a lot more issues with them.
The FDM printer that I just bought, haven't had any issues yet. It took a little bit of work setting it up. Like
Mhm.
that's definitely harder than resin to get right.
It's definitely those are way more cost effective than even resin printers, and they're perfect for terrain.
In my experience, I don't know if I'd say it's super cost effective because the filament is fairly expensive, but
Yeah,
it's definitely cheaper than buying stuff from like a store or online.
true. I found most filaments are like $20 to $30 a roll,
Yeah.
and you can get most of a table of terrain with one roll.
I mean, I guess it depends on your settings. There's a lot of factors that go into FDM, even more so than resin for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's no question that it's as long as it works, it's cheaper, and as long as you can get it to work. Did we really talk about like why is 3D printing addicting? I guess we kind of did.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
It's satisfying to get good prints.
yeah, and it's that instant gratification. You have the idea in the morning, and you can have it in your hand in the evening.
Yeah, it's not that much of a mystery.
Yeah,
Some people really enjoy optimizing their prints.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
and
really one of
getting that
those.
nice crisp prints, and also you can, if you are playing your game every week, whatever game it is, and you're like, oh, well, this unit did crap. I want for next week. I want this unit. You can just swap in and out really easy.
Yeah.
Couple hours, you can have a full squad of new guys.
Yep.
But I know, like, I've been working with a friend of mine, Pat, with his printers, and he's been having nothing but nightmare issues to the point where he had to end up like replacing his machine.
Oh, that sucks.
So you also, I mean, it's definitely a time sink to get it set up to the point where I think me and you are at, where it just works. We hit the button and it goes.
Yeah. What kind of printer is it, if you don't mind me asking?
It was an Elegoo Saturn, but I
Oh
don't
shit.
know which version. I mean, he's finally got it working, and Elegoo worked with him and replaced the printer for him. So it's not like, I mean, they did right. I think they did everything they could, and it's working now. So,
That's good.
but it was a couple months of him like messing around and things that wouldn't level, and then he'd randomly get failed prints, and it ended up being a corrupted motherboard.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
That's why people say 3D printing is its own hobby.
Yeah. I feel like I was fortunate. My first printer, my first resin printer, worked pretty well out of the box up until I had some issues with it. I had a feeling that I had some like debris in the vat, but I just risked it and I ran it anyway, and it just cracked the screen.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember getting that picture. It's crazy
Uh,
how little of a piece can do that too. You
yeah.
really got to make sure you clean up any remote failures.
Yeah, but I got like a lot of stuff printed with that machine, so I feel like I got my
Hmm.
my, my money's worth. And then the one I got after that, also a fantastic experience so far. Pretty much worked right out of the box. So
And which one is it that you have now?
Anycubic Photon Mono 2, link below.
That's probably out of date now. They might not even sell it anymore.
uh, I think they do.
I think Anycubic goes through the printers the fastest.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, the Mono 2 is still there. It's currently discounted at $189.
it's a good printer. I like it. Like I was
Yeah.
saying, like I anything over 4K, I feel like is just overkill personally.
Yeah, I mean, I still use my Photon S to print like smaller terrain pieces and stuff.
Yeah,
It looks just as good as the other ones.
but then you also have to like post process stuff too. There's that.
That's the smelly part. I mean, the resins stink, but when you have a vat filled with alcohol that you crack open, you can clear a room out real fast.
That's why you got to get that water washable resin, man.
True. Just don't make sure you're not dumping that down your drain. For
Yeah.
anybody listening,
Yes,
just because
please.
it's water washable does not mean it's good for the environment. You still have to let it sit outside and evaporate.
I always mention that. I always make sure to mention that when I'm like featuring it in a video.
Yeah. I see a lot of people that just dump it straight down the drain. That is
Uh,
not good. Or wash it off right in the sink.
Please don't do that. I can't believe people do that. I mean, I
Yeah,
can, but
I've seen a lot of videos where they just have a toothbrush and they're like, "Oh yeah, look, it's perfect," and they just like brushing it off right into the sink. And
jeez, that's not great.
yeah, where do you live again? I need to not drink your water.
It's so easy. Just put it in a container and set it outside and it'll evaporate. It's
Yep,
it's not even hard to do.
I have a Lowe's bucket that just sits on my porch. It takes a couple days, but yeah,
Yeah, you just got to make sure it doesn't get rained on.
yep,
Put some kind of a cage over it so the birds don't get into it. So yeah, with all the ease of use and cost effectiveness of 3D printing also comes a bit of a dark side, we'll say. It does tend to be a little addicting.
yeah, yeah. I think the addiction comes with the fact that you can have pretty much anything you want whenever you want.
Yeah.
I mean, I play a lot of Warhammer games. So like Heresy. If I have a list idea, I can go on Cults or any of the websites and find what I want in like a matter of minutes and have it in a couple hours.
Hmm.
And then, in that couple hours, if I have another idea, I can load up another print.
Yeah.
I mean, in a day, you can have 5 or 6 different army ideas like on a printer.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's definitely different from the way things have been historically. When I first got into the hobby, I remember it was before started this channel. I remember saying, "Okay, I'm going to have 4 armies, and that's going to be it, and I don't want more than that." I just had 4 armies and four plastic tubs. So I have a little bit more than that now, so
Yeah, just a couple more.
I don't even really feel like my collection is that crazy compared to some people.
Yeah, my whole second story of my house is pretty much dedicated to my hobby stuff.
Yeah, my basement pretty much is entirely just for that and washing clothes.
So, I mean, I remember like when I got started, you would make your list and stare at that list and tweak that list until you got paid in 2 weeks, and then you'd buy one piece for that list,
Yeah.
build that, maybe paint it, and then when you got paid again in 2 weeks, you'd buy the next part, and you'd just constantly be tweaking the same list and playing that. But now it's like, oh well, that didn't work. I can just put that aside and forget about it and print something else.
I think it's definitely different for someone who's running, say, a YouTube channel, or if you're selling prints on like Etsy or something like that. I wouldn't say they're addicted.
Yeah, that's an income source. That's a job at that point. See, I have a hard time calling it an addiction. I
Yeah.
mean, because that means you can't stop. But I think people, and I mean, I've done it, where you start a project and have no intention of finishing that project, which is really easy to do. Like, for example, the Necron box for the Indominus set comes with all those warriors.
Yeah.
I decided I have all these extra guns. I should just print other bodies for them. So I ended up printing, 60 bodies, and now they're in a plastic bag. So, you
Yeah.
know, doing stuff like that with no intention of finishing it is definitely a problem. Leads to a lot of clutter and a lot of random plastic bags filled with parts that you're probably never going to use.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of it. I'm like, I was trying to find something to compare it to, and
Hmm.
I pretty much like ended up comparing it to hoarding. I mean, it's not really like a destructive thing, probably in like 99.9% of the cases. um,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think the line would be the same for everybody. I think it's probably something that you know.
Yeah. If you want, as long as you can admit that you're like, hey, this is probably too much crap.
Yeah,
Maybe I should not print a new project and organize the ones that I have at least.
yeah. Some people maybe don't mind having like 20, 30 armies. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have the storage space for it. Yeah. Until a couple months ago, I had 12 across a couple different games.
That's another thing. There's a lot of different games too. So,
Mhm.
I mean, if you do play a lot of games, you might need a different army for each game, or 5 different armies for each game.
Yeah.
I mean, I do kind of feel like it's a gray area, and it's something. I mean, you probably know, or maybe your family knows, if you are addicted to it. I don't know.
Well, I'm happy to say I have not printed anything hobby related in at least 4 months now.
Oh wow,
So
that's pretty good.
I can stop whenever I want.
Yeah, I think when you're just printing stuff just for like the satisfaction of like printing something and seeing it being printed. But if you have like a purpose for it, like if you're actually going to use it in a game, I think that's justified.
Yeah, even if you just want a display piece or something, but
Yeah.
just have a plan for it, I think is key.
I don't want to say everybody goes through kind of a phase when they start 3D printing where they're just hooked on it and they can't stop printing stuff. But that was the case for me, at least when I got my first resin printer. I remember I was printing out alien hives and I just kept like printing them out and printing them out. And ended up with a pretty big collection, and most of that stuff still to this day isn't painted. Yeah, I eventually started slowing down because I was like, I have a lot of stuff here that probably won't ever get painted, won't ever get used.
Yeah, and then to jump into something else here, like it's not the same to get rid of your 3D prints, like your 3D printed armies. It's a little more of a gray area to sell them
Yeah.
than it is like, oh, this Games Workshop army, I can just hop on eBay and sell it.
Yeah, we've talked
Uh,
about that recently, how most, I mean, probably pretty much all 3D file creators They'll have some sort of agreement that you're agreeing to by buying the file and printing it.
It's for personal use only.
Yeah, technically you're not supposed to be selling the stuff on eBay. So like once you have possession of it, you could probably sell it on eBay and nothing would happen, but like technically you're not supposed to do that unless you have a commercial license.
Yeah. I know for me personally, like I just recently sold a bunch of stuff and I had like 3D printed proxies in some of them and I just tossed them into the box with the army. I didn't have them listed on eBay, so everybody just got them for free.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been thinking about a lot as I've been printing more and more stuff out. I'm like, okay, what if I decide I don't want this like 5, 10 years down the road? I can't really say that I know anybody personally who's been negatively affected, but I've seen people who I'm like, man, this person needs to simmer down a little bit because they're just like printing nonstop. Like I said before, yeah, if you're like actually using what you're printing, if you have a plan for it, no, there's no issues there. But if you're just like printing a mountain and it's just building up, that's where it becomes an issue, man.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to how we used to build armies, where you build your list and then, focus on just that list. You
Yeah.
do that with printing too. You make a list of what you want in your army, you focus on that, play with it a couple times, paint up a couple things. If you don't like one unit out of that, replace it, But it's when you make a list and then completely switch to a different army the next week, which you can do. I mean, I have 3 printers. I can print out a 2,000 point army in like 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not hard to do. Do you consider yourself to be a collector of miniatures?
I think I am. Yeah. I like seeing the collection together more than I like playing most of the games.
Yeah. It is pretty cool to have a pretty sizable army.
Yep. And seeing them all together on the shelf is very satisfying. I've played across a lot of editions of Warhammer and I still like collecting more than I like playing.
I don't know if I would call myself a collector. Maybe in the future, maybe I'll say that. I started picking up like more and more like RPG books and other just like smaller manufacturer games, like the rule books for them. So like I feel like I'm collecting those, but when it
Yeah.
comes to the miniatures, for whatever reason, I just don't consider myself to be a collector of miniatures, but I guess technically I am.
I think that for you has a lot to do with what you're using them for.
Yeah.
Like a lot of your armies are to go on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't feel as passionately about them as some other people.
It could be. Yeah, that could be it. I don't know. I, I mean, I do like OPR's models, but I am
Yeah.
printing them out because they're paying me to print them out and showcase them.
Yeah.
So,
Whereas I have my 100,000 points of orcs that I've had since I was in high school, and that like collection to me is worth a lot more. Like it's very personal.
yeah. Well, that's good. You were thinking about getting rid of that, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I was considering selling off pieces of it. I don't think I could ever get rid of all of it.
Yeah, don't get rid of it.
Yeah.
Got to keep it.
The problem is it takes up like 4 boxes, like so pretty significant sized boxes. So it's a lot of storage.
Yeah,
One day I would like to have a giant shelf that I can put all of them on.
that'd be really cool. As
Yeah,
long as
I
it's
think
got
they're actually
glass.
glass and green LED lighting.
Wow, that'd be cool.
Yeah, one day.
One day. I,
And
I
then
would
that,
also love to have a nice big display shelf. Then maybe I
yeah.
would feel like a collector.
Yeah, it is hard when they're all just in boxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen my upstairs. I have a couple shelves that I can rotate things through on to show off. And
Yep.
I like that.
Right now everything's very like I'm just fighting for space right now, so
Yeah.
until we get a
Yeah.
bigger place. So like along with 3D printing comes like file hoarding, I guess you could say, which I don't really necessarily think is an issue. I mean, it doesn't take up physical space
Yeah.
unless you're spending like a lot of money on it and you're just never actually printing those files. That
That becomes the issue.
you
Yeah.
have no plans to.
Yeah. And a lot of things are in an impulse buy price. So, like
Oh yeah,
99
yeah.
cents for $2 or whatever. So it's like, oh, I really like those guns. Maybe I'll use them one day and pick those up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you said, it doesn't take up physical space, but you do have to be careful.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty good with that. I know I've been a OPR member for like 3 years now. So I feel like I'm paying for the files, but I'm also paying to support the company, which is it's a company that I like and I believe in. Maybe like 95 or higher percentage of the files that I have are from them, just because they give so many files.
Yeah, I have a pretty substantial collection too of like bits and things.
Yeah.
Probably another issue is like FOMO, basically. I need to get it now. But again, if you don't have a plan for it, there's usually a way to get those files again. It just might not be as easy. Just the FOMO and being aware that it might be like, yeah, maybe you don't need that thing.
Again, like I'll say, like I really don't think that file hoarding is an issue unless you're spending more money than you can afford to spend, or like an unreasonable amount of money on files that you probably will never print.
Yeah, and then when you use sites like My Mini Factory and Cults, they actually save all of your stuff digitally.
Yeah, that's really nice.
It's a huge help. Yeah, you can just go back in through Creator and find exactly what you're looking for. You don't even need to store it on your computer.
It's so convenient. I love it.
Yeah, it's really good. I think too we should talk about how many Patreons there are. Like you could get swamped, end up with like 15 to 60 different file Patreons, and you're never going to use all of those.
I can't say I really peruse them that much, but I know there's a lot out there, probably hundreds, if not thousands,
Yeah, yeah.
if not tens of thousands. Maybe not tens of thousands, but at least thousands. There's a lot of them. They're really good. They provide really good value.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a great place to get files. I
Mhm.
think, just I wouldn't get too worried about I mean, I know a lot of them have the, bonuses for being subscribed for a long time, but if you're already subscribed to 8 people, you're spending $100 a month or whatever on all these Patreons, I wouldn't feel bad about dropping a couple.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that kind of fitting into this.
But I think it's a guilt thing, like, you're supporting this creator, and it's a very close to a one-on-one with
Yeah,
this person. So then you feel bad. Yep, it's another thing you just gotta be aware of. Make sure you can actually afford what you're doing. It
yeah.
it can spiral out of control very quickly.
How many Patreon subscriptions do you have for STLs at the moment?
None.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. You're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I have two. I have OPR, and then I recently joined Dark Realms. I'm definitely going to print some of the stuff I get from them out, but yeah, I don't plan on printing everything out I get from them.
Yep, so I treat it more like a, $15 purchase than anything. So if I like what they're doing for that month, I'll subscribe for that month.
Yeah,
If I like the next month, I'll stay, but if I don't, I'll drop it and come back.
yeah. I mean, a lot of them are set up so like it's such a good deal. You'd be stupid not
Mhm.
to subscribe and just stay subscribed, because like if you are at least printing stuff out somewhat regularly from them, eventually you're going to get something that's going to make the last 2 or 3 months worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's so cheap.
Yep, until you have 8 of them and you're paying, $100 a month on STLs.
I haven't heard of anybody having that issue, but I'm sure that that's happened to some people. I think it's the convenience factor for me more than anything, and FOMO again comes into play there.
Yeah, I guess that's true, and a lot of the places have a, loyalty bonus thing now,
Yeah,
where
that's
if you stay
yep.
for
Yeah, it's a pretty clever business model, I gotta say.
yeah.
It's doing real well. It's making a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised Games Workshop hasn't tried to get more involved in the 3D printing besides just shutting people down.
Yeah, you just wait, man. It's gonna have to get bad enough.
I
At
think
some
that
point, they're gonna have to address it.
yeah, I mean, more than, "Hey, don't use the 3D prints in our
Yeah,
tournaments."
yeah. I give it maybe like another 2, 3 years, maybe.
I probably would have said that 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'll see. I mean, they're an old company, and they have shareholders.
That's where they get into the mud.
Yeah, it might take them a while.
I don't think the digital pile of shame. I think it's kind of a stupid concept. I really do.
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't take up any space.
Yeah,
I mean, just be responsible.
maybe not a stupid concept, but like it's you can't really compare it to a physical pile of shame. You really can't.
Yeah.
Once you 3D print the stuff, then you have a physical pile of shame.
You do have to be aware of the health issues. It is a chemical. I mean, and
Yeah,
it will affect your lungs and exposure to your skin maybe the first time it doesn't do anything, but you can develop an allergic reaction and it'll burn your skin. I've seen, posts on Reddit. Yeah, posts on Reddit of people having to go to the hospital for pretty severe resin burns, and it's just
Jeez.
overexposure to it. So make sure you're wearing thick plastic gloves when you're doing it. You don't want latex for most of the resins. You want nitrile gloves because it'll add a chemical reaction to it. I forget where they landed on the fumes from the printing, but you definitely want at least a mask, if not like a full gas mask.
Yeah, you should treat it like any VOC.
And then, especially when you're using the alcohol, you definitely want a full gas mask, like you said, a VOC mask, and glasses. Make sure you're wearing glasses. It'll burn your eyes. Sometimes I'll get lazy and I'll be removing supports. I do my support removal before I cure, and you'll pop a support off and it'll go flying and hit you in the face. That happens a couple times and you get lucky, and then you're like, maybe I should start wearing glasses.
Yeah, that's definitely something that can happen. I've had a few go flying.
Yeah, it's yeah, just be safe. Keep your hands, your eyes, and your mouth covered. The 3D printing companies, I don't think, put enough emphasis on it.
They
Like the
really,
people who
yeah.
make the printers, like in their videos, people are barehanded. They're not wearing glasses, they're not wearing masks.
Yeah.
You should be wearing your gloves and stuff even when you're like replacing your FEP screen.
Hmm.
Like anytime you could come in contact with the resin, because you never know when, hey, that's probably a little bit too much, and now I have a blister on my finger from it or whatever.
It's probably a bit of like whose responsibility is that, and no one really wants to take responsibility for it because you have the STL companies, you have the
Hmm.
3D printer manufacturers, you have the resin companies, which could be the same company, but not always.
Yeah. Well, and then every resin has a different chemical compound.
Hmm.
Like everything's different. Just as a rule of thumb, make sure you're just wearing all your PPE.
Yeah, I get pretty annoyed when I see people like not using proper protective equipment, especially when they're a YouTuber and they're like putting bad practices out there into the world. Like people are going to buy a 3D printer and they aren't going to realize what they're getting into. I mean, it's totally manageable.
Hmm.
I think the biggest victim would probably be local shops. I feel bad for them.
Yeah, because they're really the people who are losing the money.
Yeah. The closest shop for me is about like half an hour to like 45 minutes away. It's just hard to justify driving that far for me just to buy something that I know I can get cheaper online. And
Yeah.
when it comes to like models, I'm going to consider 3D printed stuff before I make the drive in there to see what they have in stock.
Hmm.
I mean, if I had a store like 5-10 minutes away, it would be a different story. But
Yeah. I think if you're playing at a store regularly, I think you should purchase things from there. Maybe not everything, Um, but definitely supporting your local stores are important. And they're, like you said, it's probably the people who suffer the most. Games Workshop probably lost a little bit of profit from 3D printing, but at the end of the day, they probably don't, obviously not enough that they've done a whole lot about it. But your local store, if you're just printing an entire army and then you spend 10 hours a week in your local store playing games there and you haven't spent any money, they got to pay for their electric and, their rent and everything.
yeah,
They need to make their money somehow.
yep,
And unfortunately, buying a pot or two of paint when you're in there doesn't quite cut it.
yeah. That is not a great business model right there.
Yeah.
I wish I had more time to actually go out and spend time in local stores and actually support them. But like I said, it's a pretty good drive for me, and yeah, it's just it's hard to do.
Like I said, if you're going in there already regularly, then that's when you want to support them.
Yeah,
If you just play games at home with your friends and you never go into any stores, well, then they won't even know what they're missing. So,
yeah.
the store that I play at actively encourages 3D printing, and they have their own 3D printing commission service. So I think it's been a positive thing at that store because more people have more access to everything, and you can still support the store getting your prints through them.
I haven't heard of any of my local stores doing that, but I mean they could be doing it for all I know.
Yeah, it's more of a space thing, I
Yeah.
think, because you don't want your entire store to smell like resin.
Hmm. Yeah, you need a room for it.
Yeah. I've been looking into a lot of the stores near you. I'm going to be moving out there, and I don't think any of them have they don't have any 3D printing stuff. Yeah.
They don't really have like a good spot to do it either. So
Yeah, they're all a
that's
little
another
bit
issue.
smaller locations. The game store that I play at is called the Fabricators Forge in Pittsburgh, and they bought an entire police station.
Oh
So
wow,
like they have like a basement area and like holding cells that they do their printing in.
that
So
sounds awesome.
yeah, it's pretty sweet. So we didn't really talk about it, but going into a game store with the 3D printed army, like a lot of people don't like that. I don't know if you've experienced that, but it's kind of weird if you have proxies in your army having to reach out to your opponent, being like, "Hey, are you okay with this?"
Yeah, a little bit.
Hmm.
My local club that I used to go to was just like just like a temporary like rented out space. Like it's not like they were like selling things and it was like frowned
Yeah,
upon.
yeah. I mean, I know for me personally, I tend to just ask people if I've never met them before if they're okay with the 3D prints, and most people are. I haven't had
Yeah,
any issues. But like the hobby store that's 5 minutes away from me, their stance is proxies are fine, but full armies are not okay. It's something that you need to be aware of now, I guess. I don't think they would kick somebody out if they came with a fully 3D printed army. That'd be kind of
I can definitely understand why they would be a little insulted by you bringing that to the store.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Because it's like we said earlier, like it's hurting their business,
Mhm.
and it's just like you're just bringing it in there and rubbing it in their faces. You know?
Yeah, so it's just something that you have to be aware of if you're printing a lot of stuff and you have a lot of proxies in your army. I guess you gotta check with the store sometimes, or at least just your opponent, and then tournaments and stuff too, you have to check your player packs because some places just won't allow 3D printed things, or,
Yeah.
it's like 75% of your army has to be real models.
If you know you're going to be playing a game at a local store, you should definitely at least pick up a good portion of that army at that store if you can, or at least some proxies that you can use just to kind of pay your rent in a sense. That's my opinion.
Like I'm having not a hard time, but it's interesting because I'm moving pretty significant distance here soon, and looking at these new game stores and like figuring out which ones are okay with 3D prints is like I'm like scrolling back through their pictures of games and stuff. I'm like, okay, that's clearly a print, and like
Yeah.
these guys are probably going to be more okay with it than these other guys. It's just it's something I look for now.
Yeah,
So
I can understand that. I will say that when I first got into the hobby, I mean, there's a lot of unspoken things like that you don't really you just aren't aware of. I've definitely become a lot more aware of if you're going out to a store, you need to find a way to financially support them. Otherwise, you're kind of being rude, you know. kind uh,
I mean, if you're showing up for tournaments and you just drove 3 hours to get there or whatever,
yeah,
and you don't buy anything, but you're there for that event, I think, that's
yeah.
fine. But if you're showing up every Tuesday night to play Warhammer and you've never bought a single thing there, you should probably step it up. And you're ordering all your stuff off of Amazon anyway. Like that's
If they could compete with Amazon with the prices, that would help. But a lot of the times they're way more expensive, which doesn't help.
true. Yeah, that does not help. I know a lot of the stores that I've been to or looked into, like they'll give you percentages off of pre-orders and things.
Yeah.
But then you get into a whole nother issue there that we don't really need to talk about, fulfilling those orders. There's supply chain issues all over the place right now.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother topic in
Yeah,
itself as
yeah,
well.
we don't need to dig into that.
What does responsible 3D printing representation look like? That's more from like a creator perspective, I think. Like I think like you were talking about earlier, just like making sure you're using proper practices, not
I guess.
necessarily promoting rampant consumerism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky as a creator because you see these channels like I'm not going to punch down. I'll definitely punch up. Like, have you seen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not specifically wargaming, but they'll do like a different project every week or every couple days. I
Mhm.
don't know, but like just like channels like that like they're like this week we're building a studio, or this week we're building a bathroom that's going to be a computer. You know what I mean? This week we're gonna build a 20-foot tall castle. Like the Mr. Beastification of the content on YouTube. I have a bit of an issue with that. I just think it promotes this lifestyle that is really unhealthy, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
I can
like.
see that.
I will say I don't have an issue with them, but
And
yeah,
a lot of their stuff is actually for something.
yeah. I mean, it helps if it's like for charity or something. Yeah,
Well, and like they'll get sponsored. Like I know the giant robot they did was for a movie,
yeah. See, that's cool.
but they don't ever show that in like their clips and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of weird because I mean, I used to watch them pretty regularly, and I don't remember them ever doing something and saying like, "This is for a charity that we're doing here."
mhm.
But like, I think that should definitely be a good part of it if that's what you're doing. I mean, it makes sense that if you're doing these big projects, you should try and figure out a way to like utilize it.
Yeah, have
But
a reason for it existing
yeah,
besides it existing.
then it makes like smaller channels feel like they need to do the same thing to compete. And it's like, I don't want to live that lifestyle. I just I just want a hobby, man. I don't want to go crazy with this. So like in that sense, and when specifically when like 3D printing is like utilized for projects like that, where it's just like, oh my goodness. And then
Yeah,
it's like we printed out an entire village, and then the next week it's like we printed out a life-size statue of Wolverine or something like that. It's just like, what are you even going to do with this?
yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, for some of those, it's like, oh, it's a collection thing. Maybe that's a passion project. But if you're doing it every single week,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in a lot of cases there's a justification for it, but
Mhm.
it promotes just this like rampant consumerism, I guess. You know what I mean?
Well, and if you're not doing it for a job, like these projects are going to take you months.
Yeah,
It makes it seem like, oh, it's a quick project, but doing a life size print is going to take you months, unless you have 100 printers that you can run constantly.
yeah. It just becomes this like rat race to the top,
Hmm.
and
And you don't need to participate.
there's just this eternal one-upsmanship. It's just got to be like bigger and better and bigger and better.
Yep.
I mean, I want this channel to be as good as possible, but that's not necessarily what the direction I want to go with it.
Yeah.
Like I've done a lot of projects where I'm like using like plastic bottles and stuff to just kind of like
Yeah.
repurpose
Recycling
things.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
repurpose and recycle. And I feel like that's historically been a big part of this hobby, and we're slowly kind of getting away from that now. The easier it becomes to 3D print terrain and just whatever you need, I think it might make people less incentivized to do stuff like that. I don't know.
I mean, I completely agree because it's a lot less work just to hit play, like put the file in your slicer and hit play and then walk away than it is to, oh, maybe I could use this bottle and this cap, glue them together and cut this piece off. And now I have what I want.
Yeah,
So I think it does hurt creativity a little bit, as far as like that kind of stuff goes. So I mean, and like even for me, I've always wanted an orc gargant, and it was always something I thought, well, I should probably scratch build it because that's what you should do. But now there's like gargant files that you can print. I'm like, well, maybe I could just print it. So it definitely takes away from it.
I mean, it could take away from it. It could add to it. It's definitely had an effect on the handmade aspect to the hobby,
Yeah.
I think.
If you get good at sculpting, you could sculpt your own pieces to fill in where you can't find anything else to replace it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's what I've been thinking about doing. I need to get more practice sculpting in, but
You could start a Patreon. And do you think it's too late to get into that game, or is it still
I
a
don't think so.
viable?
Like I wouldn't expect it to blow up overnight.
If you promote it right,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you promote it right, it might. My concern has been eventually we're going to get some sort of program that can generate files from prompts,
yeah.
and that's where things are going to get interesting. Because a lot of these STL companies are going to be like, well, shit, now what do we do?
Yeah,
I'm sure it's
yeah.
something they're thinking about. Or like they might even create the software themselves. I don't know.
When we first see it, the quality will probably not be there.
Yeah, I
But
don't even know what to think anymore
yeah,
as far as that. I feel like I could easily see that happening within the next 6 months, even at this point.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it could take a couple years, but I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah. I could see it happening at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like maybe you are addicted to 3D printing, what would some solutions be, some ways to kind of manage that?
See a therapist.
See a therapist, yeah.
No, I don't
Well,
know.
I feel like we gotta throw in here, we're not licensed therapists.
Yeah.
I feel like we legally have to say that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, if you, yeah. Neither of us are
and
therapists.
then I'm gonna have to put a little thing that says, "Here's a site or website or a phone number you can call."
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if it is a real problem, yeah, then I would get legitimate help.
Yeah,
I mean,
if you're part of the very small minority of people, this is a very serious problem for. I'll find like a phone number or a website you can contact. But for people who like don't think it's that serious that you need to contact a therapist, I feel like just setting limits on what you're printing out, the amount of money you're spending, make sure it's within your budget. Like we said before, make sure you're gonna actually use what you're printing. Make sure you have a plan for it.
yeah, I think that's what I was gonna say. It's just
Yeah,
have a plan. If you have a plan for your project, see that project through to the end before you start your next one.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, you'll end up being more satisfied with it in the
Yeah,
long run. And even maybe like I have a hard time finishing an entire army, so maybe your plan is just for that squad and just, finish that one squad before you start the next one.
and don't forget to support the local game stores. There's still that traditional community structure set up, and but they need support probably now more than ever.
Yeah, game store is a hard thing to run
Yeah,
and a hard thing to be profitable with. So any time you can help them, you probably should.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it for this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this if you know anybody who might find this interesting. Go ahead and share it with them.
Yeah, and I'm curious what people think about this too. Like if they have any issues or know anybody that have had issues with printing, good or bad.
Yeah, once again, Brooks does have a YouTube channel that he's gonna post a video on at some point. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'll put a link to that in the description below. So Brooks has a channel called Etherforge if you want to check that out. And of course, the Haunts Wargaming Patreon could always use a few more patrons. If you want to see more content like this, that's probably the best way to support us. So at this point, if you're wondering, hey, when's this extremely relevant, always on time podcast? When's the next episode going to be? Well, that's part of the joke. It's always on time. It's not going to be any particular time. It's going to be whenever we feel like making the next episode. If I can come up with a good topic and we're both free and Brooks is willing to do this, or
Yeah.
if I have other people on, it's really up in the air right now.
And if anybody has any ideas for topics they'd like us to ramble on for like an hour about, let us know.
Yeah, just a lot of it depends on how well this video does, because I have to justify the time spent doing these things. I don't even want to give a time frame. It really does depend.
It's always on time. So whenever it comes out, it's right on time.
That's true, and it'll be relevant. You better believe it.
Yep.
It'll be
Yep.
extremely relevant.
It's the perfect podcast.
I do think it would be funny to like always have a different word other than relevant, just that kind of like
Yeah.
kind of hints at what the episode's about.
That would be pretty good.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you have any stories or anything that you want to share, go ahead and leave a comment down below.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear if anybody has had any issues with, I guess, addiction or like problems that came around after 3D printing.
I'm kind of curious how common it is for people to like when they first start, they just start printing stuff like crazy. Because like I said, that's what I did. Did you have that happen to you? Like when you first got into it, were you like printing stuff out constantly?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And a lot of it I justified as I'm just testing this out and I'm trying to dial my settings in. So I need 5 more random D&D miniatures, and I haven't played D&D since 2010.
Yeah, that sounds fair. That's
Yeah.
that's understandable.
Yeah.
Well, you never know when you'll get back into it.
Exactly. I could play tomorrow. You never know.
Hey, there's a lot of different RPG games out there that use those. So
It's very true. Yeah.
we don't have like a cool outro catchphrase or anything yet, but we'll try and come up with one, I guess. How about that?
Yeah, if you have
have any-
suggestions on that,
Yeah.
that would be. I feel like we should just get a clip of Gandalf saying a wizard is never late.
Dude, I thought the same thing. There's just a lot of meme potential there, just in general.
Yep.
That's
That
funny.
should be the thumbnail
Well, now I
for
gotta
the
do it.
intro. Yeah. This podcast is never late. It arrives precisely when it means to.
It's also just, it's fun to like kind of make fun of the fact that like everyone just has to be like so rigid about when they're posting stuff.
If we miss a month or two, we miss a month or two.
Yeah. But if we get like 50,000 views on this bad boy, you better believe.
We'll be doing it regularly.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. It was fun talking about all this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for helping out.
Yeah, looking forward to next time.
Yeah.